All right, y'all. Welcome to the 250th episode of the Unfazed, Unedited podcast. Yes, we're
Wow.
provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. Look, if y'all don't know who I am and who Lisa is, at this time, I don't know what to tell y'all. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold. I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, look, I think at some point it's going to be like a documentary of what actually happened from beginning to where we are with
hmm
this podcast because it has ebbed and flowed and changed and altered. And, I'm still very proud of the fact that this was a technically a pandemic podcast
Yes.
that didn't die
Yes.
off. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Uh-huh.
we know of other folks that had podcasts and they kind of tapered off or they came back in a different form and you know we are here, we are still here. So how are you doing, Dr. Lisa?
Doing okay. Yeah, can't believe it's 250. I feel like we just celebrated our 200th episode.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's wild and puts me in a bit of an existential crisis about the speed at which time is going past, which I've probably mentioned before because I seem to be preoccupied with it.
That's right. I just told somebody the other day the saying is the days are long but the years are short, and that's kind
Yeah.
of with these. It's like if y'all saw the behind the scenes of how we're scheduling and trying to make sure we have opportunities to record, but yet we look back and
hmm
hundreds of episodes in a catalog for you all to go back and enjoy
hmm
and so forth. So look, Lisa, we need to declare big things about this podcast. Like maybe one day this will be like in the Library of Congress or something to document what we
Ha!
did, what was
Hmm?
going on in the world, and people that were thinking out loud about it in the moment. So, when kids are taking their AP US history exam, they know what was really going down because we were talking about it. So, anyway,
Yes, I'm sure we'll be the go-to study guide for AP history in the future.
dream big, dream big. That's right. All right. Well, let's get into the the word of the week. Okay, so Dr. Lisa, I was looking at a very specific museum that I plan to take Trey to because he is our resident artist in the house. It's the National Women's Museum in DC. I love their pricing scale for ticketing because most kids under 18 are free. Even if you have to pay, it's like maybe $16 for an adult, and then there's a sliding scale for people to attend. And so, of course, when you start looking up museums, that changes your social media algorithm and you start getting things about museums,
Yep.
obviously.
Yep.
And there was this word that popped up, which it's a phrase, museum fatigue. Museum fatigue. And this is old terminology. This is 110 years old. And it was coined by Benjamin Eves Gilman, if I'm pronouncing that middle name, that second name correctly, the secretary of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, way back when he gave us this language to describe the physical and mental exhaustion people feel while walking through museums and galleries. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, again, personal responsibility. Maybe I am just tired and lazy as I'm walking through because I want to see everything. I want to read every placard. I want, literally a sponge trying to take in as much as I can. And apparently, this is a thing. This is a thing. And of course, if you're a curator of any sort, then you understand that museums are curated and there is a very specific science behind the curation of museums. And so that's why those of us who are laypersons when it comes to museums and we simply go there to enjoy them, that's why there's so much seating. That's why there are so many common areas for people to have space not to crane their neck or look too far up or down, or the heights of things, given that people of different heights are going to be looking at the same thing. And so all of that is its own science that you and I are not well versed in at all. We just simply know it exists. And so Gilman first wrote about this whole museum fatigue that individuals feel in the Scientific Monthly, that explained how visitors like you and I, Lisa, often have to bend or lean or move over, crane our necks, or even just stand in an awkward position to view artwork. And so part of this is just straight up cognitive overload. There's so much to take in that your brain, from the moment you walk in the doors, it's processing things that are new to it, both visually, auditory, even tactile. And so with that, all of that we're taking in, plus the historical context, names, dates, materials, meanings, all of that. And so what I find interesting is that I've been in museums, I wouldn't say around the world, but certainly both inside the United States and outside the United States. And I can say that I was pretty tired after visiting them. And what the science is telling us is that after about 30 minutes of time, our absorption of new information can become harder and harder. And so that makes complete sense just with how the brain learns in and of itself. But Lisa, this is at least, again, we have new language to describe a relatively common and familiar experience here.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid that I would not read anything because I would just walk quickly through, and my
Uh-huh.
dad would read everything, and that was really annoying as a child. Um, but I've definitely gotten more interested in reading. I'm still prone a little bit to skimming. Um, but I wonder if that's what it is. Like I reach my bucket gets full within 30 minutes and then I can't take anything else in. But it makes a lot of sense, right? Because when you think about in a classroom context or teaching, there's a lot of data that shows how long people can sit and listen to information or engage in discussion. And I think this is probably why some museums have become more tactile. They have opportunities to interact with the museum pieces too. So it's not just
Mm-hmm.
standing and craning and such.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting. And I bet it is still relevant, even though this was 110 years ago and there have been advancements in how exhibits are displayed and such. But I wonder if museum fatigue is, I was just talking about moderators and mediators, and I'm thinking this might be a moderator. The
Mm-hmm.
strength of your fatigue, is it moderated by the degree of trauma that is associated with a museum? So for instance, if you are a Jewish person with Jewish or have Jewish heritage and you go to the Holocaust Museum, do you fatigue more rapidly because it's so visceral, right? In the same as the
Mm-hmm.
African
Mm-hmm.
American Museum of History and maybe the Women's History Museum, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing this dude from 110 years ago probably wasn't factoring that into his mention of this brain fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not to go too far into to this because I could talk about this a long time, but I think you are right in thinking about that fatigue, and how it's compounded by several oppressed identity groups. The first thing I thought of as you were talking was of course, the National Museum of African American History. You're actually supposed to get in the elevator and go down to the bottom floor and then come up, because the
Mm,
bottom floors are about, transatlantic slave trade, all of that as far as the economy and the institution of slavery. And then each level is something different. And I'm trying to remember where, um, I'm trying to think where, I can't remember what floor Emmett Till's um, exhibit is on, where it's literally the restored casket of Emmett Till.
hmm
And there's like some graphic visuals of his body in the actual coffin that was restored.
hmm
And I I just recall being like, I could just go to sleep right now. Like
Yeah.
it was exhausting and I had been told, I had been warned that I've been there now 4 times, and it took me one time for certain areas. I couldn't go. This is not a museum you would go
Yeah.
and see the whole thing, especially when it so deeply relates to your identity
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't say that about going to the Holocaust Museum. It was heavy, but not to the extent of my own identity. So I'm sure there's probably something to that. But it took me
Hmm.
4 visits to see all of it, and it was increasingly lighter at the African American Museum because it went from slavery all the way up to, very specific exhibits of celebration. So celebrating
Hmm.
President
Hmm.
Obama and celebrating athletes and, things like that. So we know that's by design, but at the same time, how does that equate with our fatigue? You got me thinking. You
Yeah.
got me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, Lisa, take us into phase one.
Okay, we're shaking it up. I'm going first this time. So I think, we've lamented many times on this podcast and recently about the state of the world and the, you know, strength of disagreement that we are experiencing with each other and this inability to compromise or come to the center or hear each other, et cetera, et cetera. Um, And what I've been noticing, and other people have been noticing it too, because I've seen these comments online, is the World Cup, which is happening right now in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. We're getting to the end of it. But this is a global tournament for a global sport, of which the US has been slow to adopt, but is finally dragging itself there, particularly for women's soccer. And so people from all over the world have come to watch their teams compete in the World Cup at a time when the United States is actively becoming more hostile to its partners in the world. And there certainly have been examples of that where I think the Egyptian team was held at the airport for 8 hours. There was a Somali referee who had a visa and then it was revoked, and a couple of other instances, right? But outside of those, there's been this joy that has permeated the stadiums and people from different countries, supporting their teams, but laughing and kind of engaging together. And so the commentary and what I would like to talk about in part is the juxtaposition of the celebratory global intersection and connection around this sport, while at the same time, there are these deteriorating relationships globally, particularly between the United States, and there's a war happening in Iran, right? And all of this stuff. And so holding those two things together is kind of like, this is what it could be, but this is where we are. Um, and it feels a bit bittersweet. And England has made it to the semifinals, so they'll be playing this week. Not feeling great about their chances to making it to the final, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the World Cup, Shauna. I know your kiddos are big sports people. Actually, you're a big sports people, but I'm not sure where soccer ranks in your sports interest. And if you've been seeing that or feeling that buzz or that warmth that has been lost.
Yeah, I have. And I feel like this is not taking anything away from World Cup. It's more so thinking about the slide into it. That we've had World Cup, and if you're thinking about relatively global sport and folks paying attention to global sport, there's been a slide into that. It's been World Cup. Then right before that, the, in my opinion, insane and idiotic America 250 MMA fights on the White House lawn, which ruined
Mm,
said White House lawn. I could go on and on about that, but that was still something that people were globally paying attention to. And then before that, you had, which still is arrogant, but yet the reality of it, the NBA finals with the New York Knicks being the world champions of
right.
basketball here in the US. And of course, people around the world are watching that because that leads into, upcoming, LA 28 Olympics. And so there's been a nice and convenient slide into the World Cup to begin with. Now, what I think is always curious, in addition to that slide into World Cup, is Yes, there's lots of joy, there's lots of camaraderie. I feel like this is one of those sports that very rarely does anyone have to convince various people of the importance of it around the world. Like, even as I truly have not closely followed World Cup, I listen to a podcast that always mentions it. It gives you the highlights of it, but I haven't been watching matches. But what's been curious about it is that the it's kind of like uh well, let me say this. I was watching CNN this past weekend, and one of the commentators, they weighed in on the unpopular opinion on something, and she said her unpopular opinion is that World Cup is bigger than the Olympics. And as much as I
Yeah.
love the Olympics, I think I agree with her on this because
Oh,
there
mm-hmm.
are so many implications on things. There are political implications. We know that in other countries, there are literally death threats on players' lives if they miss an on goal or something of that sort. And so we know how much other countries hinge everything on many of these matches. And so with that, they take it seriously. So I feel like as as seriously as they take the lows of World Cup, they also take the highs and the joys of World Cup as well. It is very big. And so I think that's true. And what I think is even more ironic, I know this is, we're both Americans talking about a World Cup on a podcast, is that we have all this mess going on with NATO trying to manage our
Yeah.
president in a
Mm-hmm.
situation where it's meant to, the whole point of NATO is to talk about common good on various issues, and NATO is trying to manage one person. And so it's like we have
Right.
all these opportunities for collaboration and getting on the same page and building consensus. And so it's like, oh, it's a shame that our political landscape that could look like a
Mm-hmm.
World Cup actually doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost whiplash in a sense that
Mm-hmm.
how is it that I think I saw one funny post that said something about the World Cup is like when you finally get to spend time and spend the night with your cousins despite your parents hating one another. Like, that's what it feels like. It's like we get to have a great time with our
Yeah.
global relatives despite our world leader not being on a good page with anybody in the world, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's kind of the political and athletic whiplash because, uh, Lisa, I will never say that sport is divorced from politics. I think it is inherently ingrained with it. And if it's
Yep.
going to be inherently ingrained, we know that that can give us that whiplash between, gosh, why can't we replicate what's
Mm-hmm.
on the pitch in the same way that we could replicate it in politics? Like, you know, we we don't have officials in politics at this point because people don't want to do their damn job here in the United States. So we should have a balance of power, but we don't for various reasons. There should be a rule of law. We don't, but I guarantee if you're
Mm-hmm.
playing soccer and it's a red card, people will take note of that. But even still, I can't remember the player's name, Lisa, because obviously I'm not up on World Cup. But again, even our president being able to sway anyone so that a player isn't ousted from a red card and they actually get to play the next game. You can't tell me that politics and sport weren't
Right.
already
Right.
entwined anyway. And now we're even starting to corrode that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh my Lord. So yes, it's inextricably intertwined, and it's sad that once again another example of what it could be. Every institution is important, imperfect, but World Cup is at least a glimpse of what politics could be, and it's not.
Yeah, I do think the World Cup is perhaps bigger than the Olympics. It's different. It's not apples to apples necessarily, but
That's very true.
but
Yeah, yeah.
but soccer or football is the global game. It is played everywhere, right? If you win the World Cup, you literally are a world champion. If you
That's
win
right.
the National Hockey League or the NBA here in the US, you are not a world champion, right?
Mm,
And
mhm.
so, and it's less, I mean, you make some interesting points actually about the fact that how for the most part, the rules of the game are followed. There are certainly some people who have been annoyed. Um, but
Sure.
yes, if you get a red card, you leave the pitch, right?
That's right.
If you get sent off, and we live in a time where our leaders are not following those simple rules. And I guess our refs right now are pretty much the judges that are standing firm, those of them that are able to, right? But I just,
Mhm.
it's, it's less, for me, it just feels like there is a beauty in international collaboration and shared goals and the idea that this is something everyone can participate in. Um, and that is what I've been seeing reflected on the TV screen and on the internet related to all of the fans that have come.
Mm,
I mean, a ton of fans didn't come out of protest, so it's not as big as it would have been had we had
right.
a different set of leaders. Um,
Hmm.
so I do think I mean, I guess it just makes me again look at that. I'm sad again because I'm like, it's there, right? We could have it if we just behaved differently as a country to other people, to other countries. But the other thing I wanted to mention, and this is the annoyance, is we've got a lot of commentators being like, you don't have to wait 4 years until the next World Cup. Um, you could join your local football club, soccer club, you could do this, and I'm just like screaming at the television, Shauna.
Mm,
2027 is the World Cup for women. So this is the men's World Cup, and next year is the women's World Cup. So you can watch this all again in 12 months for the women. And just PS, United States of America, your women's football team is miles better than your men's football team. They have won the World Cup 3 times. Three times.
mm-mm, mm-mm.
Um, and so it just is this, so I'm like, oh, look how delightful this is. Everyone getting on, having fun. And then you have a commentator who basically just completely ignores the fact that there's going to be another World Cup next year. And then I'm just like angry and grumpy at that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, and but we do the same thing. I mean, even though I still feel like World Cup is bigger than the Olympics, we do the same thing with the Olympics too. Like we always conveniently skip over Winter Olympics to the height of
Hmm.
summer. We don't talk about world championships. We don't talk, there are things that go on in between that we don't talk about. And usually it's very gendered. I mean, and well, I continue to look at sport through a gender. Lisa, did you know? Because of course, with Mr. Kendrick so deep into lacrosse, it's been incredible stuff going on with lacrosse right now. For example, because this will be, I think it's been since the 40s since lacrosse was actually in the Olympics. So the U.S. is reintroducing it at LA
Hmm.
2028. That's one thing, but the other thing is the Professional Lacrosse League that was founded by a gentleman. They just got a huge ESPN contract with a big injection of funding. And I was excited about it. It's cool. We get to watch it on TV other than, ESPN College, that type of thing. We can watch it on mainstream ESPN. And then I was sitting there and I noticed, interesting. Here we go again. PLL, Professional Lacrosse League, WLL, Women's Lacrosse League.
Oh my gosh.
Here we go again. So even in the middle of the joy of finally getting, a very cool sport being highlighted, there's still the freaking patriarchy that's like a roach that doesn't want to die. I was so irritated by that. I was like, I can't unsee it now. I can't unsee it. Can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
It's
and with
so
that,
obnoxious.
it's yes. And so I gave that little rabbit trail to come back to say that again, here we go, where we're thinking, oh, there's lots of things to celebrate and enjoy, but it's almost that incremental improvement and change. It's like, well, we should be happy because, a few years ago, we didn't even have a PLL or a WLL. So just be grateful that you have those. And it's like,
Mm. Hmm.
and I feel like going back to that Angel City documentary,
Yeah.
If you started out right, you wouldn't have to dismantle anything.
Right.
Now you're building something that of course, it's not perfect, but it's going to have to be dismantled when you could have learned from every other sport on the
Yeah.
planet
Yeah.
that already did that and had to dismantle and is still dismantling. And so it's unfortunate that now we can see it even more clearly, but yet still it's like, well, let's get good enough in first and then we can alter later. No, let's do it right the first time.
Hmm. Yeah.
So anyway.
Do it right the first time. What a novel idea, Shauna.
As most women have always told men, if you did it
Yeah.
the way I told you to do it the first time, right?
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
All
do
right, let's move on to phase two.
All right. So, Lisa, since we were already touched base a little bit on museum fatigue, let's get into museums. And one of our, I would say, prized possessions of the American people, the Smithsonian Institution. So,
Oh God, your face, for those who aren't watching, Shauna's face. Is this gonna make me mad? Is this phase gonna make me mad? I feel like it is.
it's gonna simultaneously make you mad and then it's gonna turn around and make you proud. So let
Okay,
me just
okay.
preface it by saying this. So last year, y'all's president said that he wanted to do pretty much essentially an audit of the Smithsonian Institution, which we know is made up of a plethora of different museums and exhibits that make education and information public to the American people and beyond. Okay, great. So, given that, after this so called kind of audit investigation, which we know is very much a ploy to
Uh-huh.
propagandize the
Mm-hmm.
Smithsonian Institution, his Domestic Policy Council produced a 162
Oh
page
my
report
gosh.
entitled Saving America's Story from the White House. It's on the White House website right now.
Wow.
It's actually going to be linked in the email for this episode. And it's a report that overall condemns Lonnie Bunch and the Smithsonian for promoting, quote, extreme ideological activism. Okay. Now, I got to about page 30 something and just wanted to vomit, which I
Wow,
knew
I'm
this
impressed.
would happen, which I knew was going to happen. But let me tell you what's going on in this report. So we knew that it was going to be a long, drawn out attack of lots of different people,
Hmm.
places, things, and ideologies. So the report specifically attacks the Smithsonian's leadership, Lonnie Bunch and his staff, for launching its, quote, Center for Restorative History. And the point of the whole center is to include those who have been previously excluded: BIPOC people, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, LGBTQ plus people, as well as, of course, put everybody in there: lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. I also read intersex in a couple of different places. All the people in those communities that have been historically excluded, but always there. Y'all remember my analogy of having a spotlight on one person on the stage, but when you lift the house lights up, there's many people on that stage. We just
Hmm.
have not
Hmm.
seen them. Okay. So, yeah, that's the part that's going to tick you off, Lisa. Now, let me give you the part that's going to make you super proud. And the
Okay.
reason why I started reading this, Lisa, I don't think I told you this. So, of course, I was assistant provost for diversity and inclusion at the last institution where I was, but my provost was a trained historian. And as gifted as an administrator she was and is, it was something else listening to her talk about history, historical approaches,
Hmm.
um, especially as someone who uh, identifies as some of those identities that are historically excluded. It's interesting
Okay.
seeing things
Yeah.
from their lens. And so, as I read this report, again, another briefer statement, the Organization of American Historians, which is the nation's largest group of scholars of US history, They fired back, Lisa. This is the part that's just going to make you stick out your chest. They accused the administration of presenting a partisan ideological attack in the guise of historical critique.
Hmm.
Now, to me, I'm like, ooh, I like that. That's kind of sassy because it's pretty much saying that, yes, it's an attack, but not only is it an attack, it's an unqualified attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally like they did with Dr. Fauci and trying to tell him after a career of 30
Hmm.
plus years of studying infectious diseases that he didn't know what the hell he was talking about, him and his team. Get out of here, right? So, the report. Our wonderful, amazing historian said, quote, the report's objective is to punish it for doing that in a way that makes US history accessible to and reflective of all Americans. The report is only the latest chapter in a broader systematic campaign that now targets an institution that was never meant to answer to any single administration. The Smithsonian is what they're referring to. It accused the current president of ignoring decades of scholars and trying to, quote, erase the conflict, struggle, and diversity, the complexity that has always defined the American people's experience. And then they say, quote, make no mistake, the report from the White House represents an attempt to turn back the clock to a time when US history was taught as the history of white Christian men who conquered a continent, US military leaders who rarely lost a battle, and US presidents who were single handedly responsible for national greatness, all under the cover of, quote unquote, anti DEI and anti woke crusading. I'm like, ooh, get them.
Hmm.
And so I love that they named and responded back to all these accusations from the White House, because the White House tries to call out, quote, promotion of transgender issues, quote, pro illegal immigrant activism, and tries to say that at the core of the Smithsonian, it fails to tell an inspiring and unifying national story that focuses on, I want to throw up here, on the heroism of the founders
Hmm.
and acknowledges Christian constructive role in shaping the nation and its freedoms. Now, again, as I was listening to some other stuff on CNN, I was listening to a little snippet of Lonnie Bunch specifically say in response to this report, he continued to harp on the language of historical accuracy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, with that, that's basically saying quite clearly that this White House wants us to tell an inaccurate history
Yeah.
and tries to make that turn into an ideology that they like and that's comfortable for them. And then the last thing I'll say is, timing is very important. And the president of the very same organization of American historians, Mark Stein, says, interesting. It's symbolic timing, Mr. President, that you're dropping this scathing critique of the Smithsonian on what day? The 4th of July.
Oh, of course.
So I'll pause there. I've spoken enough. My blood pressure is rising and
Mm.
boiling even as I talk about it. But way to go to our US historians. But what do you think, Lisa?
I think you probably don't need me to say anything to know what I think.
Now, your face, look, y'all can't see her face now. Her face was something else. It's like, whoa.
I
Ah,
uh, I just I don't really have words,
shaking her
honestly,
head.
because I just have this like cognitive brain frazzle that
Mm-hmm.
happens with all of this history stuff, like trying to just omit historical events and people and facts because it doesn't paint the United States in the nicest of lights. And it's just so contra just I can't even I can't even articulate how unbelievable it is. It's not unbelievable from this group of people, but
Yeah.
that it has any kind of traction with anyone is just mind-blowing to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
the United States documentation and then expression of its history has for so long been just partial. And that is not contentious. That is true. And
There
so
you go.
efforts have been made in the last 50 odd years to balance that. So it's not like it's not taking stuff out. It's just
No, no,
adding to it and um
that's right.
reframing some of this other stuff. Like, presidents were also enslavers. Right? That is real. That is the thing. And no, enslaved people were not happy just because Thomas Jefferson was their quote unquote master, right? Like, um,
Boom.
and I just, yeah, so
That's right. That's right.
yeah, so I have all the feelings around this and this whole anti-woke, anti-DEI. It's illegal. I've said this like 1,000 times on this pod. It is not illegal,
No, it's not. It's not.
right?
It's not.
Like you
Mm-mm.
can't be a free speech crusader and at the same time tell people they cannot talk about diversity, equity, inclusion.
But yet
No.
they do it anyway.
Yeah,
But
and
well,
yeah.
and that's where, oh my goodness gracious, that's exactly where. See, I'm reading too many things at the same time, Lisa, because I'm also reading Resistance History by Tad Stormer that finally came out in June, and I'm getting to it now in July. Um, and I love that he frames it similarly or in concert with Nicole Hannah Jones' sentiment around
Mm-hmm.
the we are saying, you and I, people that think similarly to us, are saying that the Constitution and the freedoms that were initially espoused are not working or applying to us.
Right.
That's what we're saying. When Nicole Hannah Jones, Tad Storm, and so forth are saying that, oh, no, 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 it's working as designed. But
Mm-hmm.
now, even if we fell in line with some of that, the Center for Restorative History, it is, as you always say, widening the tent. It's like, no, 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 no. We know it was written to only apply to certain people. But now that we're here, we want it to apply to everyone that's here. And that opening of the door, expanding the tent, enlarging the house, all of that, there are folks that are resistant to that because they want their exclusive country club and
Mm-hmm.
not an
Mm-hmm.
actual country. And so with that, here we are. So, you know, it has reframed how I hear conversations now about the origins of our country, the development of our country.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, no. It's kind of like saying, no, that's not what I meant. Like it's literally like the framers of the Constitution saying, no, 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 that's not what I meant. I didn't mean for enslaved people to be free. I didn't mean for people of darker color to have what I have. I didn't mean for immigrants to be able to own property and make a living and have all of these rights and access to other things. I didn't mean it when I wrote it that way. I didn't mean it that it should apply to everybody. And even I believe I'm trying to remember where it is. It's a building in Philadelphia that it's so cool how social justice art continues to emerge because there's a
Mm-hmm.
placard in Philadelphia where it highlights where this is where much of the Constitution was written in this
Mm-hmm.
area of the city. And then someone projects a huge light on the wall that says on the opposite side of this building held enslaved people at the very same
Mm-hmm.
time. And so
Mm-hmm.
that dichotomy is what makes 45, 47, his cronies, his White House uncomfortable. Is that, yeah, we know that this Constitution wasn't written for everybody, but now we want it to apply to everybody. We know these policies, the Bill of Rights and everything else was not written for these groups of people, but now we want it to apply. So please don't think that we're going back in history and thinking that, oh, they considered Black people, they considered women, they could, no, of course they did not. And now it's the resistance of forcing one's hand to do so. Um, and so when it comes to this whole Smithsonian thing, it's almost like they want to apply the original Constitution's very limited myopic framework to sharing the history of this country.
Mm-hmm.
And the Center for Restorative History and others are saying, yeah, we know what you wanted to tell when it comes to our history, but this is a more complete history. Restorative doesn't mean somebody rewrote and lied and changed. It means they
Right.
added to and gave a fuller perspective to what we already knew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even as I saw a post, I need to dig it back up somewhere, where a group of historians discovered that there were a couple more presidents that were slaveholders. That doesn't negate, like, I'm just giving y'all a random number. I think it moved from 12 to 14. But saying that two more presidents were slaveholders doesn't change the fact that we already had 12.
Right.
Adding two, right? Or inherited them when they married, when they took a wife, and, the father-in-law gave individuals to that person. This was happening. And so that's not
Mm-hmm.
changing history. It's giving a fuller perspective of what is going on and what happened. And so, with that, I'm grateful that, as much as you and I, Lisa, have harped on the disrespect of expertise in this country, we have
Mm-hmm.
expertise saying, no, you're not going to ignore us. You're not going to ignore decades of history. And, you know, especially as academicians, we're always looking back to see what was researched before us, and we build upon it. They're like, no, 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 you're not going to negate. I guarantee you, some of the stuff that was cited as foolishness in the White House report is stuff that some of these historians actually researched and wrote and spent their life's work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the person leading that domestic policy council, or the quote unquote audit, like, has no, like, zero experience as a historian. I think I don't even know that
Not
she's a
one bit.
lawyer, not that that would qualify her, but um yeah, and I think about, like, the Reconstruction and the Reconstruction America amendments, like,
Mm-hmm.
right after the Civil War, that was when the United States got closer to what we understand to be the values and principles that created the country, even though we understand
Mm-hmm.
that many people were excluded from that, right? But if you just take the abstract values,
Yeah, yeah.
and then
Mm-hmm.
that all got that, that they withdrew the northern armies from the South based on some, was I forget what happened, but it was some compromise that was, like, not cool. And then that's when Jim Crow got ushered in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then you've got the 1965 and 64 and 65 Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, and look what's happening to that. And many argue that the 60s, or those two laws in particular, was kind of another reconstruction, right, in terms of a refounding. And if
Mm-hmm.
we are not only erasing those 2 points in time from how we think about the United States history, we're also actively dismantling the laws that are still in the books, right? So the Voting Rights Act,
Mm-hmm.
and then twisting the Civil Rights Act to go after companies that are providing support to underrepresented employees, or supporting white people who think they've been discriminated against, right? Or saying you
Oh,
cannot
yes.
have gender
Mm-hmm.
neutral bathrooms because that's
Mm-hmm.
unlawful DEI and discrimination. So just completely
Mm-hmm.
warping and co-opting these important milestones that have moved this country closer to its abstract ideals. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so anyway, I guess I don't know what I have to add because I'm now rambling because it just makes me so angry, and it's just so stupid. It's just stupid, Shauna. Like, that's where I go when I don't have anything else to say. Like, it's just stupidity.
It still goes back to two things in my mind, and then I'll wrap it up from there, since we're talking about our 250th episode, so close to the America's 250, despite us not
Yeah.
wanting to go that direction, and we're going there.
Mhm.
But the two things that frustrate me the most is, clearly this is white comfort on display. Once again, white, male, straight
Yep. Yep.
comfort. And the other piece that I continue to say, and it's been in SCOTUS decisions, from John Roberts and others, where once again they don't get it and they don't want to get it. That's initiatives like the Center for
Mm-hmm.
Restorative History is not functioning in a vacuum. It is a course correction of
Yep.
history, not
Yep.
a rewrite of history. That's what it is. And so we're not saying that the Center for Restorative History just is plopped down in the middle of nowhere and it's starting to create create biased and
Mm-hmm.
how can I say fiction narrative, fiction history on anything. No, what it's saying is we've looked back, we see how incomplete the history is.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, as a result of that, we want to get more and more accurate with history. And we cannot be accurate if we're only telling what is it, what is that TED talk? The
Oh,
something about
the
yes,
single story.
single story. That's it. That's the peril that we fall to is a
Yeah.
single story, and we know which story is going to be told.
Mm-hmm.
We know which story is going to be told. So, way to go to the Organization of American Historians. I want to highlight too, Lisa, and maybe we can get to this in a later podcast because I thought this was so cool and interesting. When you go to the website for the Organization of American Historians, way, way, way down at the bottom, they're doing a oral history project that is very timely, and I'm so touched
Mm-hmm.
by how they're doing this in a thoughtful way. They're doing a federal employees and contractors oral history project of what's going on in the moment. So we don't
Mm.
lose what has happened in their experiences.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so when I saw that link and they're still collecting data and listening to stories and ethnography about that, I sent it to a bunch of my friends that I know have or had or are still in limbo with their employment and their contractor roles. Yeah, their stories need to be told. The anxiety and the fear of every day going in, not quite certain if this is going to be your last paycheck, and partners and spouses and families having to accommodate that uncertainty is very rattling when we have a country that has been built upon, the old adage of, oh, get yourself a good government job, because we know that's never going anywhere. That check comes every 2 weeks on the 1st and the 15th. And that is just the height of stability. And we see the exact ass opposite. And so I'm glad that historians are
Yeah.
capturing that experience so we don't forget it.
Mm-hmm.
So something very
Mm-hmm.
cool and important to capture. Okay. All right. So look, that's it. We gave y'all a lot on this 250th episode
Mm-hmm.
of the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, and hopefully many, many, many more to come. But that's a wrap for this week. You can reach us on all of our social media and your favorite podcast apps at Unfazed, Unedited with brackets around the first un. You can email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com or just visit us at our website, unfazedpodcast.com. You can get literally all 250 episodes there. Okay. So if you like this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends, your coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. So here's to 250.
Here's to 250 and go England. You got this.